Before the Industrial Revolution, men used to work alongside women in homes. And although women didn't have the same rights as men, they were somewhat satisfied in their social standing.
You've got a lot of orders coming in, honey. We need to work harder.
That's fine with me. Could you please hand me the water? I'm really thirsty.
Okay, honey.
Thank you. I really love my life. I have a lot of freedom and choice. There's a lot of productive work. I wish my life could stay like this forever.
Unfortunately, this feeling was not maintained for long, as work became less at home through the Industrial Revolution, and men began Sadly, many men, as leaders of the house, treated their women little better than slaves, and overall, women didn't have any rights or freedoms in their domestic lives. Also, although this scene is purely for the entertainment of third period A-Push, this scene contains graphic content. So, if at any time, Mr. Razum, you feel the urge to scream, cry, or hide under the desk, please do not hesitate to give us an A.
Honey, you're back from the factory. Is that in your hand?
It's a little
That's a
Beer.
You liar!
Don't talk to me that way! You filthy swine! No! No! Go back to work! Clean the house! It's so filthy!
I did it 6 times!
So what? It's so dirty! You suck!
I cleaned it
Get
6
out
times!
of it! No! You know what? That's it!
I cleaned it! I cleaned it!
How could this happen to me? I made my mistakes, got nowhere to run.
Many women started to deviate from the expectations men created for them in the early to mid-1800s. These women have gone for a midday stroll and began to curate radical ideas.
Hey girl, what's poppin'?
I'm sad.
Why, girl?
Because I don't have any of the same opportunities my husband does. He can express his political views, he can vote. I can't do any of those two things.
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah. I think what we should do is we should just come together, do some conventions, and express our views to the world.
Are you crazy? You want to get lynched or something?
I mean, I think dying and expressing my rights is better than just going on like this.
Girl, you crazy.
To quote one of my favorite people,
How often has man returned to his home with a mind confused by the many voices, which the public assembly have addressed themselves to his inborn selfishness, or his worldly pride, and while his integrity was shaken, and his resolution gave way beneath the pressure of apparent necessity, he has stood corrected before the clear eye of woman, as it looked directly to the naked truth, and detected the lurking evil of the spacious act he was about to commit.
We should probably get out of here before our husbands figure out that you said that.
This is Harriet Tubman, one of the most prominent figures of the early 1800s. This is her leading a bunch of slaves through the Underground Railroad system.
Alright, come on guys, we gotta keep it moving. Come on, you guys are gonna die if you guys don't hurry up. Let's go, let's go. What happened?
It's my foot. I think I broke it.
Did your parents not teach you how
I
to
can't
walk
get
or
up.
something when you were younger?
Can't get up. Please
Oh
help
my
me.
God. Okay, right here. Let's go. 1, 2, 3. What kind of
Get
slave
up.
are you? How'd you get so fat working in the fields?
No,
Did you like eat the cotton
No,
or
I'm not
something
fat.
instead of actually working?
I'm not fat. It's just my master beat me so much I'm just swollen all over.
Okay, whatever. Whatever happened. Okay.
Oh,
They're over there! Get them!
Oh, okay, guys. I've already freed 300 slaves. Okay,
No.
I don't care if I just don't free one less.
No.
Okay. See ya.
no. No.
Get them! Go!
Harriet
Tubman!
Tubman.
Rolling! Get him!
That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man.
Yeah, I bet you could eat as much as a man.
I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman?
This excerpt from the speech Ain't I a Woman that Sojourner Truth gave at the Women's Convention in Akron, Ohio, 1851, was one of the most influential speeches of all time, and went on to be a symbol that women were equal to men. One of the most prominent events in the history of women's rights was the Seneca Falls Convention, which was presented by three amazing trendsetters. Lucretia Mott, known as an experienced orator, she formed the idea of reforming the position of women in society. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, widely known as the creator of the first organized women's rights convention, initiating women's suffrage movement. Finally, we have Susan B. Anthony, a Quaker, committed to equal rights and worked with Elizabeth.
Okay, everyone, stop it! We know you guys love us, but we have to go on to the important stuff.
Yes, I think what we should do is draft our plan to add on to the Declaration of Independence, because this is extremely, monumentally, tremendously pivotal to our society.
We call it the Declaration of Sentiments. It's just like the Declaration of Independence, but we demand women's rights.
Blah, 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 blah. Next on our agenda is voting rights.
What do you mean, voting rights?
What I mean is that, like men, we as women should be able to vote because voting shouldn't be a secular issue.
Black people don't have to vote, so why do we?
Well, do you have an issue with voting, Lucretia?
Now, let's not start a fight among us girls.
Well, that is exactly what happened. It got really intense as every woman there started calling each other names.
You little... Everybody stop, okay? How are we any better than the men who forbid us from our basic rights if we just quarrel amongst each other? This convention is supposed to bring us together in an effort to combat the effects of the men. We have to turn history into her story.
Yeah! Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony went on to create more of these conventions, which occurred yearly, create the National Women's Suffrage Association, made a weekly paper to promote women's rights, and created the history of the women's suffrage book. Lucretia Mott went on as a prominent orator in society, preaching to many women about the rights women deserve. These extended effects heavily contributed to the overall freedom and rights of women across the nation. This event set a precedent for other women's suffrage initiatives. Unfortunately, there were some attempts against these events.
The case of the many prominent women's suffrage members had many lasting impacts that can be seen to this day.
Why is my nail polish coming off? Man, I wish I were back in the early 1800s. They didn't have any nail polish problems.
Trust me, honey, you do not want to be there. Back then, women didn't have rights and basically couldn't do anything.
But I bet it'd be so good back then. They didn't even have nail polish.
Actually, life was actually really hard for women back then. In the past, many women were abused by their husbands, who forced them to slog around the house and sometimes beat them. And back then, women didn't have a choice on anything. Fortunately, though, later on, after the Industrial Revolution, women such as Sojourner Truth and Elizabeth Cady Stanton began fighting for their rights, and although not much change was seen during their lifetime, their ideas had a lasting impact on many things we consider staples of American society today. The concern they voiced on women's voting rights is shown in the 19th Amendment today. Conventions they held, such as the Sakina Convention, set precedents for women's conventions today, and the documents they drafted, such as the Declaration of Sentiments, were major turning points in women's rights as women began to stand up for themselves.
You know what? As I think about it, you're right. I look way better without any nail polish.